Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down the issues that Chelsea encountered against Leicester City despite starting the game well in their 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge. But before we do that, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But now, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Chelsea, more of a 4-2-3-1. Giroud just ahead of Pulisic, Mason Mount, and Pedro Rodriguez, and in midfield with Jorginho and N'Golo Kanté. Then we go to Leicester City, more of a 4-1-4-1. You have Jamie Vardy up front, out in the wider areas, and with Ayoze Perez and Maddison, and in midfield, Choudhury and Tielemans ahead of Ndidi. So now let's look at the game, see what issues Chelsea encountered despite starting the game very well against a Leicester City side that arguably should have gained all 3 points. So when we break down Leicester City against Chelsea, what is key here is how Chelsea were able to start the game so well and how Leicester were able to find themselves back in it. We look at Leicester, we obviously expect them to drop off into a 4-5-1 like they did. And what happened there was that they dropped off a bit deeper and they allowed Chelsea to take the game to them, because when you think about how Chelsea have struggled this season, it's about the fullbacks pushing a bit higher. You have Jamie Vardy who could break into that space. You have creative players in Maddison and Perez who could also break and supply him with service. And then you have a midfield that is capable of outplaying Chelsea's midfield and specifically disrupting them. So that is how they were going to go about it. They dropped off deeper. One of the key aspects to how they were doing that was they were trying to obviously stop Jorginho from dictating play in deeper positions. They didn't really do a good job of that. We saw it earlier on where we saw Vardy trying to block off passes into him. At times we'd have Ndidi step to him, and most of the time we'd see Tielemans try to get to him. But that was kind of how they would go about it, because when you look at the midfield battles, Tielemans against Jorginho, Choudhury against Kanté, you had Mason Mount with Ndidi. Chelsea was so strong in that opening half based on the fact that they pressed effectively and energetically, and often they did leave it 2v1 in from the back, so Giroud would press the center backs, and the only time we'd see Mason Mount kind of step to him was if Giroud was blocking up the pass to Ndidi. With that being said, there were times where Kanté did step forward to press the center back as well, and we'd see kind of Mount drop off or Jorginho push into that space for him. But when you break it down, that's kind of how Chelsea were going about it. The wider players closing the fullbacks. You had Mount sitting on Ndidi, and basically what was also key to what Chelsea were doing was that their key players their talents were being maximized. They were playing balls into Giroud, who was involved in most of their best chances in that opening half, if not all. Jorginho was still getting time in midfield to distribute play. Pedro and Pulisic, they're going to come centrally. Mount trying to run off and join the attack. And the also key thing here was that Maddison and Ayoze Perez weren't doing a good job of tracking Emerson and Azpilicueta pushing forward. Perhaps it was a ploy to the fact that if you invite them forward and you're able to sustain or cope with their pressure, you can break on the counterattack, but it was a risky game and Chelsea were dominant, specifically in those opening 10 minutes. How? Let's look at it quickly. We start with one chance, Jorginho getting space in a deeper midfield zone, and he plays the pass in between Choudhury and Maddison for Azpilicueta on the overlap. He ends up delivering a cross into Giroud, who holds off Evans, chests it into the path of Pedro, who's ahead of Fuchs, and he fires a shot that should test Schmeichel, but it doesn't. One warning sign there. Shortly after that, we see Jorginho again from deep, and this is where we see Ndidi step to him. Ndidi doesn't get tight to him quick enough, and that allows Maddison to now be vacant. And what happens here is that he plays the ball into Giroud, who holds off Soyuncu, and when he holds him off, the ball bounces into the path of Maddison. That forces Schmeichel into a save. Pulisic can't fire the rebound into the net, but it just goes to show Jorginho free to play those penetrative passes from deep. Giroud holding off both center backs and allowing his teammates into play. That's not what you get from Tammy Abraham. So you get from Giroud, which is why he justifies starting again. We look shortly after that, something similar. This time we see Giroud occupying the two center backs, so something different with a run in between them. And we see Pedro making a run across Fuchs and in between Soyuncu for Jorginho, who again clips the ball over the top, and it just misses Pedro. But it goes to show that Leicester have to pick him up, and if not, Giroud is really causing them problems there, and that was a big issue for Leicester. The build up to the goal, it kind of sums up what Chelsea were trying to do when they were pressing. However, this time, although Ndidi does make a mistake, it does fit the general theme of the game. You see Giroud out on the right-hand side, so Pedro takes up Evans, and when Evans plays the ball to Ndidi, it's Mason Mount who was stepping to Ndidi and ensuring that he couldn't get time on the ball. This time he dispossesses him and fires his effort instantly past Schmeichel. Chelsea deserving to be in the lead in the opening 10 minutes, but they should have continued to build on it. The problem here, they just lack those quality players in the final third that are ruthlessly efficient and can make the difference, and that's what the best sides have, because shortly after that, we see something else from Chelsea. This was probably their best attacking chance of the game that sums up everything that they were doing right. It's Jorginho getting the ball, and what happens here is that he slides it out to Emerson, who is pushing behind Perez, so he plays the pass to him, and that forces Ricardo Pereira to step to him. Now we see him play the pass into Pulisic, who gets it ahead of Evans, and what he ends up doing now is he slides it back to Emerson, who locates Giroud, making the run across Soyuncu into that left half space. So he drags out his marker and he pulls the ball back to Pulisic. And when he pulls the ball back to Pulisic, if it wasn't for Christian Fuchs coming across to make a vital interception, that could have been another goal for them. But it just goes to show everything that Chelsea were doing right in that first half. Jorginho getting time on the ball, fullbacks pushing by the wide players in Leicester that weren't looking eager to track, Giroud's movement to occupy center backs, and then getting Pulisic, who wasn't really that involved, but more so Pedro, playing off the striker to get into legitimate goal-scoring opportunities. Besides that, Leicester struggled on the counterattack due to Chelsea's pressing. The only real chance that they had to possibly score a goal was when Vardy pressed Kepa, and Kepa almost gave the ball away. So now let's look to the second half, because Chelsea started the first half well, and Leicester never really looked like they had a kick in the game. So how did Leicester improve? Well, we're going to break it down right now. So even when we look to the second half, nothing really changed in the terms of how Chelsea were approaching the game, and they were still having Jorginho with so much time on the ball to really make an impact from a deeper position to switch the ball. We saw Tielemans and we saw Perez try to step to him on a few occasions, but he was still able to dictate tempo in the opening 10 to 15 minutes of that half. But Chelsea really struggled to create chances. The only chance that they did have in that half that looked like it could pose a threat to Schmeichel was when Zuma won a challenge and slid the ball out to Emerson, and he was able to locate Giroud with a cross over Evans, and Giroud nodded it right at goal at the near post. Besides that, Giroud came off at around the hour mark for Tammy Abraham, and Chelsea kind of fizzled out after that. But how did that all start? Well, James Maddison finally got involved. And how did he get involved? Well, he started to vary his movement, which we didn't see in that opening half. And we also saw Leicester pass the ball with a bit more conviction, and they were able to bypass Chelsea's press as they started to fatigue. So we saw him move off into central positions, dropping off into midfield to show himself. And when we look to that opening, to the minutes building up to the goal, we saw him involved. And we'll look at two situations in particular. We'll look at one where you end up seeing the ball switched out beyond Pedro, and that was another factor. Fuchs started to win his battle with Pedro, where Chelsea's fullbacks were winning the battle against the Leicester wingers in the first half. Leicester's fullbacks were winning it against the Chelsea wide players in the second half. Fuchs is able to get by Pedro, and when he gets by Pedro, what ends up happening there is that now that forces Azpilicueta to step to him. So Azpilicueta steps to him, and Jorginho's recovering, so he's able to play the ball into Maddison, and he plays into Maddison, who takes his first touch across both of those players and into the path of Christensen. He's able to gain a yard on him on the outside, and it fires a cross shot just across the goal, but it's a warning sign for them. It just goes to show that you can't have those things happen. Shortly after that, we see them now bypass the press. So the ball is played out to Ndidi, and Ndidi is pressed by Mount, but he instantly plays it to Ricardo, who pulls out Pulisic, and then he plays it to Tielemans, who pulls out Jorginho, ends up dropping it back to Ndidi, and who do we see drifting out into that space in between N'Golo Kanté and Jorginho? It is Maddison to get the pass, and he's able to turn at the back four and help Leicester push higher up the pitch. Even when we look at the build-up to the goal, yes, Leicester did score from a corner kick, but it's Fuchs again getting the ball from Perez, and he's able to break past Pedro, and he runs at Azpilicueta, and his cross hits off Azpilicueta that goes out for the corner that Ndidi eventually rises over Azpilicueta to convert. Chelsea moved to the bench. They end up bringing on Kovacic for Jorginho. Like I said, they brought on Willian for Pulisic, who really never got involved. And then Leicester made a change with Prayet coming on for Chowdhury. But in those final 20 minutes, that is where Leicester were able to get Chelsea into several, or cost Chelsea several issues. How do they do it? Well, let's look at 4 examples that kind of highlight Chelsea's issues in those final 20 minutes. The first one, we see Jose Perez get away from Kovacic and slide the ball beyond Pedro for Prayet. So when he slides it over to Prayet, what ends up happening there is that forces Azpilicueta to him. Now he's able to play in Fuchs, who does get the ball ahead of Pedro and beats him to the challenge. Once he beats him to the challenge, like I said, you have Vardy making runs, and you end up seeing Perez making a run across Emerson. So he plays the ball into Perez, and his first touch isn't good, but it falls into the path of Maddison breaking into the box again free, and he takes his touch by Emerson, free on goal, fires his shot inches over the net, should score, but just goes to show they get beyond Pedro, they're able to break. Maddison again breaking into the box, big problem. Shortly after that, we see another issue here. Throw in from Azpilicueta to Kanté, plays it back to him, gets it back. He's closed down by Fuchs and Prayet. What ends up happening here is that Kovacic is marked out of the game by Tielemans, and what ends up happening is that Pedro is a bit higher. So once they win that ball, it's Maddison again who's able to find the space to get into a position to receive it, and they end up playing the pass in between Azpilicueta and in between Kovacic for Maddison, who is now able to break on goal. You have Vardy making the run in between the center backs, and he plays a reverse ball around Christensen for Vardy to make the run with Zuma coming across, and you already had Perez running across Emerson. So Vardy gets into a good position, but he drags his shot inches wide of the net. But just again, you have Azpilicueta caught too high, Emerson caught high, able to have Vardy dart into that space, Maddison free, big issues for Chelsea. That's another area where they're able to exploit. The next example highlights the issues that Chelsea have encountered with Azpilicueta in the start to the season. What we see here is Willian clipping a diagonal ball out to Azpilicueta, breaking in behind Maddison, who does switch off. And now when he gets in this position against Fuchs, he has to deliver a quality cross into the box. His cross is team that hits off Fuchs, and it falls to Maddison, who's able to spin off of Kanté and get in behind him. So now you have Kanté and Azpilicueta out of position, and he locates Tielemans ahead of Kovacic to bypass him. So once he bypasses him, what you see here is Perez already ahead of Emerson. So again, that's an issue. And then you have Vardy breaking in between the center backs. He finds Perez, but the issue here is that Perez's pass to Vardy to break him behind is just behind him. But again, why are Chelsea's players caught so high? Why are the midfield duo protecting the back four with fullbacks pushing forward caught high in those positions? That is the issue that this Chelsea side had, and Leicester were exploiting it. We look to the final opportunity after all. Brighton does come on for Perez, and it's the same thing. 90th minute, 1-1 at home. You have Evans with the ball. You have Kanté and you have Mount pressing Evans. No need for that. Bypasses them, plays the ball to Prayet, who's able to skip by Kovacic. And once he pokes the ball by Kovacic, you have Kanté and you have Kovacic out of the game. These are your two holding midfielders protecting the back four. And what ends up happening there is that he plays the ball to Maddison, and Maddison with Tielemans is breaking forward, and he slides the ball out to Brighton, which pulls out Emerson. What happens there is that Vardy's making the run, but he locates Tielemans making the run into the box, and he pulls it back for him, forces Kepa into a save. But when you look at all those chances, Leicester should have put this game to bed, like Chelsea possibly should have in those opening 10 to 15 minutes of the first half. So you can't say it was a game of two halves. Chelsea pressing well at the start, using Giroud, maximizing Jorginho's space, getting the fullbacks forward, didn't convert their chances. In the second half, Leicester had Maddison varying his his movement. They're able to pull Chelsea out of position by also winning those battles in the wider areas and bypassing Chelsea's press as the game wore on. But let me know what you guys think. Will Leicester City finish in the top 4 this season? And what about Chelsea? What changes does Lampard have to make to ensure that the Blues meet expectation? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.